Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. As you can see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today. Well, it's a very rainy day, I suppose, here on Fawnhollow. It's been a while since we had a rainy day, I think, in Animal Crossing. They always stick in my mind because I'm just like, oh, rainy day. Oh no, all the flowers are going to multiply. I don't know what this voice is. All the flowers are going to multiply, and it will be well, not really much of a nightmare to clean it up because a lot of the times we have paths down which sort of prevent the spread, the wildflower spread, I suppose, of all flowers. Not like 2 years ago or whatever, when I just had an absolutely uncontrollable like sprawl of flowers growing all over Fawnhallow. But anyway, hello there everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 4:55 PM on Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. So we've got Flick on Island. We haven't really talked to Flick or CJ for ages. I can't really be bothered to catch all the other bugs. Another fish that we need to get all the statues. We kind of don't need any more statues. Also, at the museum part, it's kind of like saturated, to be perfectly honest. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. What should we talk about today? That is a very good question and one I don't really have an answer for. You know what I did last night? Well, okay, not last night. I should say I've done throughout a combination of 4 nights or something. You might remember this old show called, well, it's not really old, well, it is kind of old now, it's like 12 years old now, isn't it? Called My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, which is for some reason had some like an incredible, well, not for some reason, they had like a cult following online, etc, etc, and it was actually one of the shows I watched when it first came out, and I was like, hey, you know, it's a pretty fun show, and I watched it all the way up to, I don't remember, because I stopped and started it quite a lot, normally when exams like happened, because I watched it when I probably started watching it like just when I entered secondary school, right? That seems to make sense timeline wise, which is utterly crazy. So I guess it's old. I guess it's 13 years old now. That's crazy. Anyway, so basically the last episode I watched was like about halfway through season 5 or whatever, and yeah, halfway through season 5, and it went all the way to season 9. And you know, I was curious over the past 4 days, and I can't remember why. I think I must have gone like a recommended video about it, and it reminded me of it, and I was like, huh, you know. I wonder how the rest of the series and the episodes turned out, because I have like a vague overarching idea, because you know, for some reason I was still subscribed to the My Little Pony subreddit for many years afterwards, despite the fact I didn't watch any of the episodes anymore. I kind of like just looking at good fan art, to be honest. Good art and digital art of any single thing. And if you're wondering, I'm not going to talk about My Little Pony Friendship is Magic and this thing, because obviously they're like, well, okay, it'll be obvious later, but I haven't actually watched the series properly. I was curious about it, and it turns out all the episodes are uploaded onto YouTube. I would say probably not the official uploads or anything like that. And by probably, I mean certainly not. But I mean, I think they're on Netflix anyway if you want to watch them, but, you know, it's kind of up to you if you want to watch them. I feel like if you wanted to watch that show, you probably would have watched it by now. But yeah, I basically watched all of Series 5 and Series 6 on double speed, basically. Oh, I say watched, you know. When I say I watch videos, like, I think it surprises people to learn that I watch, most of the time I watch videos on double speed, and in the cases of these My Little Pony episodes, I wasn't even properly watching them. I watched it on double speed, and then, like, basically mashing the right arrow, so I was basically, skipping through, like, okay, not quite skipping through, like 5 seconds at a time, but I watch a bit, and then once I got the gist of the scene, I basically like kind of skipped to the next scene, or when the scene got boring, I skipped to the next scene, and then I'll watch like scenes which actually seemed interesting in total. And you know, like, and I don't know how to. I have too many thoughts, and trying to think how to even start the conversation. Like, obviously, I like cartoons. I love animations and that sort of thing. Someday, you know, it'd be a pipe dream. It'd be pretty cool, I think, to make a cartoon like ones I used to watch and be able to, you know, impart wisdom onto children and that sort of thing, you know, like good morals, etc, 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 and through stories and nuanced characters, and also try and make it entertaining for perhaps an older audience, which is, you know, kind of what like a My Little Pony Friendship is Magic did. Watching it now in retrospect, it's like, you know, at the time when I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, this is like one of the best cartoons I've ever watched. Now I'm watching it, I'm like, it's a pretty decent cartoon, but it's, what I would probably say is, it's kind of inconsistent. A lot of the episodes, like sometimes it does really well, and sometimes it's just like, what? And most of the times it's like parts of it is good and parts of it are bad, or not bad, but parts of it could be better, is what I should say. And I don't think any of the episodes I watched, maybe out of like, I don't know, the 150 or so episodes I've watched, maybe like 2 have been, okay, this is like in my opinion, actively bad as an episode, but whatever, it's like, who cares really in the end. But also I'm like sort of like on two minds about this sort of thing, because I feel like it's an easy thing which people say for things which are like children's media. It's like, oh, children's media gets a pass, it's children's media, it's fine for it to be bad or something. But it's like, it kind of depends how it's bad, right? It can be bad in a good way and it can be good in a bad way, right? Like, what I feel like the premise of the idea of like children's media can be bad, quote, is children's media is allowed to be simple. Children's media is allowed to fall into tropes and non-harmful tropes because, it's children's first exposure to the medium in the first place. They're not really exposed to the tropes, Like, I'm trying to think of a good trope, like stereotypical episode formulas, things like, like where it's all a big misunderstanding or whatever, and then the lesson is about like trying to learn how to communicate, etc. It's a very sort of trite trope, and surely if you saw it in like a much more young adult focused media property, you'd be like, wow, this is terrible. But for children, it's you're allowed to give them basically a simplified moral in a certain sense, or a simplified problem, because when you're young, you've only lived so much of your life, you probably haven't heard of all you haven't faced all the different potential problems out in the future. So if there's any place to put what I suppose when you're older you should be considering, I suppose, much more basic lessons to be learning, that sort of thing, it's probably in children's media. But also equally at the same time, it doesn't mean that children's media and that sort of thing should be bad in the sense it can still be bad in the sense that, like, it's, even if it's going for something simplified, it executes upon it poorly or teaches a completely counteractive lesson, or you can have inconsistent characters or whatever, or it can just be straight up not entertaining, right? And I feel like it's an interesting thing to think about, especially with Mad Pony, because it's obviously a show targeted towards children most of the time. Presumably it's an audience leaning towards younger girls, but anyone can really watch it, I suppose, in the end. It's like, no one's going to go out and be like, you can't watch this show. Like, normally that happens when you watch something above the age rating of what you want, rather than the age demographic of something beneath you. But okay, I didn't mean to sound so hoity-toity when I said beneath you, but which is, I mean, it's interesting to think about. Like, if you don't know, Friendship is Magic basically had a huge cult following, like, for the years of brony fandom, whatever. And it's interesting to hear what people say about it being, like it's a show for little girls, which, its age demographic probably was young girls. That seems fair, but it doesn't seem like much of a criticism, in the sense that, to me, I was always like, if it's children's media and it's good media, like, I suppose it could be appreciated by anybody. But the reason, I suppose, a lot of the time that children's media does not necessarily appeal to adults is a lot of the time that it tends to contain very sort of formulaic and very tropey-like things, which is fine in children's media because that's often their first exposure, I think, to it in the first place. It isn't a trope to them, it isn't formulaic, right? But if you see that all the time, if you see a lot less, things tend to be a lot less nuanced and that sort of thing, when, you're just sort of like, I don't know, what did you expect? But it's a thing with a lot of these, like, children's cartoons, which ended up being a lot more popular with, like, older audiences, like, well, to be fair, I don't actually know if Adventure Time is meant to be a children's cartoon, but I assumed it was. Things like Adventure Time, Chowder. I don't know if Chowder is actually that well received, but it comes to mind. But there's things like that, and it's sort of just like just because there's like the target demographic of kids. Kids are quite smart. They can understand much more nuanced plot points and moral teachings, etc., etc. Which is, kind of what I was leading on to with the whole thing. Was I was watching these videos, basically, the episodes. I didn't really get like a full detail, so it's basically sort of like I got the gist of what the entire episode, each of the episodes were about, but I didn't, like, I missed out on details like certain like one-liners, etc., and jokes or scenes or whatever, because I don't know, I guess it didn't really interest me. I was kind of more interested in looking at it from a much more broad sense of view, which is kind of like what I do when I approach most things. Being like, what sort of lessons are they teaching and how do they demonstrate it? And yeah, when I was watching it back, I was like, some episodes like did really well. There's like one episode where this character, she's basically very known for being honest and telling the truth all the time, up to an incredibly like harsh extent or whatever. And she had one episode was just basically looking into her backstory, where that's where you sort of understand how she came to develop like a harsh truthness, a harsh honesty. It's because she used to be quite like what's the word? A compulsive liar, to like save face and etc., etc. And at one point, it became like the lies got so big and big and big, and they started piling up that she almost like endangered her like family and like ruined a lot of people's lives. And it was a big, I suppose, learning point to her. That this is how important honesty is and being truthful and etc. And like how lies sort of just compound upon each other and just make things worse and worse and worse until finally they get out of control. And once they're out of control, there's really nothing you can do to get back from that. And I was like, this is a really good episode. Even like outside of the fact that it's a kids episode, like, I mean, obviously you do have to sort of judge these in the context of a kids episode, in which case it makes it fantastic as a kids episode, because it's actually a really good sort of lesson, teaching the importance of honesty and how lies can spiral out of control. And also it was good from like a writing perspective, because it gives a nice sort of insight, I suppose, into the development of a character, showing how they change and how they grow, and how it actually gives a reasonable justification for why they put so much emphasis on being honest and truthful and that sort of thing, but also it still teaches it in a very true to that character sort of way. That character does like to save face, and the character does not like things to get wildly out of control, etc., etc. So it makes sense, I suppose, in that sort of sense. And I was watching, I was like, oh yeah, when you see episodes like that, you're just kind of like, oh yeah, I totally get why people like love the show, and I remember why I like the show. I mean, to be honest, the reason I like the show is it's not when I was younger why I liked that show. It's not like some high level stuff or anything like that. I like ensemble shows. I like shows with like a strong core group of friends or characters or whatever who are all different each other, and I like to see relationships and interactions as they bounce off each other with their different perspectives as they come to light, which I feel like My Little Pony did reasonably well in a lot of shows. Like a lot of the show, a lot of the episodes, but the best episodes, I say, are always the ones where it's just sort of like, here are two different viewpoints. Here is why one's good, here's why the other's good, and here's why how they sort of compromise together, and how you had to understand both of them to really sort of get your point across. And there's a lot of episodes which, I came to a realisation, I suppose, in 12 years later on in my life, when I was watching it, was like a lot of them are like really close to sort of nailing that sort of balance of like understanding that the world's full of different perspectives, and a lot of the time the different perspectives neither are necessarily wrong, they just have different situations or different understandings or interpretations. A lot of them kind of like come really close to like nailing that sort of balance of looking at two different sides, but then they sort of just like take it away again, because then it's just like, oh, one side is just very clearly in the right in this situation. It's just like, you're losing a lot of nuance that I've seen a lot of the different episodes have, and it is, which is why it sort of led me onto the thoughts that I was talking about like 10 minutes ago. That people sort of write it off being like, oh, kids, it's a kid show, there doesn't need to be nuance. And to a certain, that's why I feel like so conflicted about this, because in a certain extent I do agree, and kid show don't need to have nuance, but it's sort of the same situation. A kid show kids can understand nuance and that sort of thing. And especially with kid shows, I feel like the importance of the moral teachings that you end up showing or revealing, or the lessons you're trying to impart on on the kids who watch it, is really important, because that's like very formative years, isn't it? And you can really shape kids' understanding and belief and thoughts about the world just by what they consume, right? So so it's sort of two minds. And I was like, okay, you can have a simplified sort of plot and resolution if it becomes far too nuanced. Eventually, at some point, there's going to be a cut-off point. Heavens know where the kid's just going to be like, I don't really get it anymore, or they're going to miss the nuance and it's like not going to make sense anymore, or teach a contradictory lesson to what you want. So obviously, for a kid show, you do have to sort of spell things out to a certain degree. But I feel like there's always some room for nuance. And there's a few like of the episodes where it's sort of like, I can see that the nuance is kind of there, but it's not executed in a way that I would have liked. Now, bear in mind, I'm sort of like, I guess it's kind of hypocritical for me to talk about, because I'm not like a story writer, I'm not a screenwriter, I'm not a director, nor editor, and any of these sort of things. Do I know the best way to do it? Absolutely not. But it's sort of just like, it doesn't, I suppose, technically completely invalidate my opinions, is what I mean to say. So sort of just like, bear what I say with like, take what I say with a pinch of salt. While it's fair and valid that I have these opinions, it's not necessarily founded on something where I can back them up in the sense that I could evaluate and be like, this is where they should have done it better necessarily, because I don't necessarily know if it is better. It's just what feels better to me, which is, a very arbitrary way of basically saying, I'm just going to like say my opinion. So don't read into it too much, I guess. What is that? Hold on. What is that mission? Sell clumps of weeds? That did not always used to look like that, did it? That has a new symbol. And there was an update. I don't know if it was a hold on. This is where we go to Wikipedia and we go look at version update. What else is new? I'm losing my mind. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't new. Hold on. Version update. I think I'm on 2.0.5, right? What? Maybe it just hasn't been updated yet. It might have been a Switch update, I don't know. But anyway, there were like some shows, like one of the episodes was this character who's basically, she's like the snooty one. She's very like high class. She's all about status and image and that sort of thing. And you know, she loves the big city, the royal, like very posh sort of city. And there's this other character. She's much more marches to the beat of her own drum, etc. And she loves food. This is, I guess, the only important part, really. And they go to the big old royal city, and they're just like, oh, let's go find a nice place to eat. Let's go down these places. These are like Michelin star restaurants, or the equivalent of Michelin star restaurants. And it turns out all of their stuff is very derivative, and you know, they find out that you only get the Michelin star from this one character who's basically very hoity-toity and wants everything to be a very certain way, and sucks or like not literally sucks all the flavour out, but sucks all the sort of joy in the presentation and of the flavour, the substance, I suppose, out of the actual culinary arts side of cuisine. It's all basically in the presentation of this very exact image I have in mind of basically being like refined and demure. And basically the entire show sort of like revolves around the conflict of like going to these restaurants being like these suck, and then finding another restaurant, a failing restaurant, which has really delicious food, and being like, how are we going to make you successful? And you can start to see like this is where the nuance comes in. This restaurant is failing not because they have fantastic food. Their food is fantastic. It's more that they basically have an incredibly, like, if you want to take a nuance view, is where I thought the episode was going. It's like they have an incredibly poor marketing strategy, where they basically they haven't marketed themselves at all, and haven't looked to try and like satisfy their audience in any somewhat, or even try to like show off exactly what makes them special. And they basically haven't really tried to stand out in any sort of way, or like even tried to get their name out there. But also simultaneously, you know, the only simultaneously then they got to find a balance of like being able to get your name out there and being able to conform to what audiences want, as well as being able to stay true to their own sort of vision for a restaurant. And I was like, oh, you know, this seems like a perfect setup for like a nuance of the episode. But then the episode goes in a different direction. It's just like the very snooty character. It's just like, okay, what you need to do is basically get the free Michelin stars on your restaurant. You basically need to do exactly what every other restaurant's doing, recreate that, and then boom, you'll be good. And it's sort of like, well, yeah, I guess it's, you know, true, that would definitely get you an audience, but that's, you know, I feel like that's losing the heart of but that's kind of like a not very nuanced take on this entire thing. And it's as I say, it's a very clearly like wrong opinion in this case. And then like the other character, it's sort of just like, oh, you know, just like be true to yourself or whatever. Be like true to yourself. Now, I am reducing basically like the way they described it, because it is a bit more nuanced in the actual episode from what I could tell. But it's sort of just like, you know, it's just like that almost hit the mark, but it sort of like grazed past it. And it happened with like a few other episodes as well. There's one episode where basically one character basically gets like really carried away with, like, she loves pranks, she loves pranking people, but then she starts getting really carried away with pranks and starts, you know, pranking in the sense that people aren't necessarily having fun with it anymore. And then like to get her own back, the entire town goes down to prank her, basically making her think she caused the zombie apocalypse. And it was like, oh, you know, this could be a cool discussion of like different perspectives. You know, this character loves pranking, she loves being pranked, and well, I thought what it was going to do is like, oh, she loves pranking, she loves being pranked at the same time. So, you know, on the grand reveal that this entire thing was like a big old ruse for a zombie apocalypse that she didn't actually cause, it could just be like, oh, you know, that was like the best prank ever. I can't believe you did that. That was amazing. That was hilarious. And then there can be some sort of like discourse between the characters when she finally realizes that not all the other characters that she's been pranking are seeing it exactly the same way that she does. They don't see it as fun the way that she does, and you know, that's a teaching lesson. Instead, she just like, you know, oh, it goes for a very typical way of being like, oh, that wasn't fun because I, you know, that was just a mean prank. And then she goes, oh, I've been doing mean pranks, and I just sort of went like, oh, okay. I mean, like, it's sort of just like, you know, I'm not angry, I'm disappointed. Well, I'm disappointed in what it could have been. Do we really not have 3 of any bug? I thought while we were here, we might as well have checked, but we have so many 2s, but no 3s. All right, fair enough. you know. It's just like, oh, you went down the most obvious route. When I felt like it could have just been, it's like a little moral teaching above what wait, hold on. How do I phrase this sentence? It could have punched above its moral teaching rank than it actually did. What does that even mean? What am I saying? You're itchy. You're itchy. Oh, of course, you can get that fleet hobby. Yeah, so rather than being like a character who likes pranking and loves being pranked at the same time, who finds a joy in it both ways, and then like coming to understand then the different levels that people have of their ability to tolerate pranks and what constitutes a prank, should definitely leave all parties being, I suppose, amused in a sense, rather than, you know, the interpretation that they just can't take a joke or something like that, you know, rather than just being, you know, like, she's a bully and she didn't realise it. And I suppose, you know, it's also the sort of thing, you know, like, here I am, like, criticising a kid show for no bad reason, but, you know, and cue back like 15 minutes ago when I went on that whole spiel about a kid show. Don't need to be bad in that sort of sense. It's a sort of thing where I was realising, because this was like season 5, season 6 of the show, and for a show which is meant to be all about quite literally friendship lessons and friendship teachings and life lessons, etc., about morals or whatever, the characters are meant to go under some sort of sense of development, and it's sort of just like the episodes where they miss a marker, where I feel like the characters sort of regress on the lessons they learned, or at least don't show awareness, I suppose, of the lessons they learned necessarily. Biscuit, you want to move out? I've got one thing to say to that. No, don't go there. And by the time it comes to season 5 and season 6 or whatever, you'd expect the characters to change and grow quite a lot. It's not like Pokemon where you reset them back to square one at the start of every new season. But hey, take that, Ash Ketchum. Got him. No, sorry, I don't know where I was going with this. It's like what I find always interesting about shows with long stretches of continuity, showing their character development, and I don't think kid shows should be exempt from that. Characters in kid shows should definitely have development and that sort of thing, which is why I assume a lot of the most popular kid show do that. But it's also, you know, from a business perspective, like having a character develop is not necessarily the most. It's sort of good for like keeping your current fans around, but not good for attracting in new fans necessarily. I don't actually know if that's true or not though, but it's sort of like a business idea which I can understand the reasoning behind it, but I don't necessarily agree with that. A lot of it's the whole reason about Pokemon resets every single time is because they don't want like new people to basically be watching the show being like, I don't know what's going on, or they basically won't be able to appreciate the growth because they haven't seen the earlier episodes. And I'm just sort of like, like I understand the point. But that feels sad, you know, that you're meant to take away, I suppose, character growth or something. Like you can't have character growth necessarily in like a kid show or whatever, because it needs to be episodic. Wait, no, not episodic. I forget which way around it is. You need to basically just pick up sort of whatever episode, wherever, and it just needs to make sense without the sort of continuity from previous episodes. I'm just like, like I get it, but it feels like a restricting plate, I suppose. It feels like, oh, but if you didn't do that, then think about what even more cooler things you could have done, hey? So yeah, I don't know. You know, when I actually when I actually watch the entire proper series of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, maybe I'll do an episode about it, because it's honestly shocking. I'm pretty sure I haven't actually talked about much, haven't talked about it much from a character analysis, or like a cartoon analysis sort of standpoint. And you know how much I like to blab on about these sort of things. I mean, I guess this entire episode is all about moral teachings or something. Kid show morals? I don't know what am I going to title this episode? I don't know. But yeah, it's not just like, I'm trying to think of like what other sort of kid show sort of things I think taught things pretty well. It's hard for me to remember necessarily off the top of my head, because My Little Pony is obviously, if you don't know the format, like one of the things they do is they write a letter to basically their extreme, not their extreme ruler, but their princess being like, oh, this is like what I learned about friendship, and you know the entire premise of the show is about the main character Twilight Sparkle learning friendship lessons, etc., etc. Basically, how to be a good friend, etc., and you know all things and the wild times that comes with friendship and those sorts of relationships. It's very explicit with how it does it, I suppose. compared to other shows which don't necessarily, like, I'm trying to think of what other shows are like, you know, Codename Kids Next Door, I liked a lot, but that felt like much more like an adventure show. I'm sure it certainly had roles, but I don't really remember models. I kind of just remember, like, the adventures that came with it. It wasn't so much a character and development focus show that necessarily, like, My Little Pony might have been. I guess Recess might have had quite a few, but again, it's been ages since I've even watched Recess. I don't really remember a lot of the teachings. You know, but one of the ones I do remember is about Gretchen being, like, seeming so perfect to, like, Spinelli's parents or something, but Spinelli started getting self-conscious about it, and then Gretchen, like, trying to not recreate it, but, like, fix it by, like, trying to behave, like, really badly or something, and then Spinelli, you know, understanding that it's okay that she feels envious, I suppose. Well, not okay, it's, like, understandable that she feels envious of, you know, someone like Gretchen, who is very talented or whatever, but understands that her parents' reactions to Gretchen was not them thinking that Gretchen was better than their own daughter, more just, like, them being impressed, I suppose. And that she should work through her own sort of feelings of envy and jealousy and understand and, you know, acknowledge them and realise that they are not necessarily the best approaches to have, I suppose. No, not the best outlets necessarily to them. Her own sort of conflicting feelings in that sense. Does that make sense? I don't know if what I said made sense, but yeah, I don't know. Basically, sort of like moral teachings in kids' cartoons. It's a delicate balance. I must imagine, you know. At least I feel like if I was a cartoon writer, like a screenwriter for that sort of thing, I'd be like, I need to make sure I get this, like, completely right and cover, like, all the nuances properly, because, you know, kids are going to learn from this, right? You want to impart good teachings, right? Right? I don't really know. But yeah, I'm gonna round this episode off here. And you can look forward, by the way, to a new series starting tomorrow, replacing Death's Door, which I need to actually finish a thumbnail art for. It's very nearly done. I just, you know, I've just been lazy. I just need to actually shade it. But for now, yeah, I don't know. If you watched any cartoons with, like, moral teachings from your childhood or whatever, or even now, I suppose, if you are a child, fair enough. Like, what are the most important lessons which have been taught to you? You know, what lessons have been covered well and when have they not covered it so well, etc., etc. Just things I've been thinking about. Not to get super philosophical or anything, because, you know, I'm not really a philosopher. But anyway, if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Any likes, comments, subscription, shares are greatly appreciated. Join my Dear Darling Discord, follow me on Twitter down below. Hope to see you again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.